Hi, we're students at Longbentham Community College doing a project on teen binge drinking. We chose this topic because we think it's a problem in the North East where we live. Newcastle is seen as a party area, attracting thousands of drinkers each weekend. As a region, we drink more than any other area in England. Young men today are drinking something like twice as much as their grandfathers did. This is leading to the increase of various health problems, crime and disorder, and young people putting themselves at risk, doing things they might not do if they were sober. The government has launched a £1.4 million campaign to crack down on binge drinking. The government aims to tackle the problem by increasing police presence, confiscating alcohol from young people and splitting up groups of young people. We interviewed teachers who live locally, students and the director of an alcohol awareness team. This is how we got on.
I agree with the crackdown because I think it will stop young people causing trouble.
It's against the law, but you can't exactly stop it at the same time.
What do you think of the crackdown?
I think it's good that they're spending money on binge drinking in Newcastle because it's becoming a really big problem, and people in the community are getting quite scared of all the trouble and people smashing cars and windows and all that, so they're scared to leave the house.
I agree with the government because binge drinking is a problem in our community.
I agree with the government's crackdown because it stops people getting drunk and causing trouble on the streets.
I agree with the crackdown because the amount of teenage binge drinkers are increasing in the UK.
Do you think the government splitting up kids and confiscating alcohol, will that work?
I genuinely think that won't work. I think that will be a backward step. I think a lot of kids drinking is a rebellion thing, and I think it just would add to that. Police chasing gangs of kids around would just make that kind of rebellion a bit cooler.
Probably not. Maybe it should start from home.
I don't think it will work, just because people will probably still keep on drinking because they don't understand why they shouldn't. It'll only work if they try and educate people on how not to drink, and if they just try and crack down on people, it'll just make people angry with the police, and it'll make kids just go and do it in a house, or they'll hide away somewhere else, so it won't really stop the problem.
It's a massive problem, and I think that the problem it probably stems from the fact that a lot of teenagers don't have much to do. And I think it's probably trying to solve that is probably the main thing that could actually focus on. For example, giving students and obviously teenagers a lot more sort of places to go to at night times and a lot more activities to do outside of school as well as in school as well. And I think by doing that, it stimulates the mind, it stimulates actual students to do something rather than obviously sitting in the street or maybe causing trouble when they're drinking.
My concern would be that some people use that money just to simply maybe have more police or more people on the streets that simply move youngsters on. So maybe there's other methods or better ways of using that money in more creative ways, maybe working with young people to discuss how those issues could be tackled rather than just simply move the problem on.
Hi, we're here with Colin Sheebles from Balance. How are Balance tackling the problem?
Well, to start with, we're trying to educate people because I think not a lot of people, everybody knows that if you smoke, it's going to kill you. What people don't know that if you don't drink in moderation, there are something like 60 medical conditions that you could suffer from. And when you're young, for example, it could do all kinds of things, including damage your brain development and stuff like that. So the first thing to do is educate. The second thing to do is make sure that when people do get into problems with alcohol, they know where to go for help. And the third thing is that we're trying to lobby government and other regulators to make sure that alcohol is not too cheap, it's not too available, because while it's a legal product, that's fine, but what people are starting to treat it like is a pint of milk or a loaf of bread. It's a drug at the end of the day, and we've got to treat it with respect.
The government have recently launched a crackdown to tackle teenage binge drinking. How will this affect the region?
You'll see a lot of education, you'll see a lot of advertising programs and so on.
A survey by the Trade and Standards Institute recently found that the number of teenagers drinking weekly has fallen from 50% in 2005 to 38%. So why is it so much money being invested in this?
And I think that's great news, first of all, that more young people are not drinking. And I think adults in society ought to know that more. And actually other kids who drink ought to know that because, there's all this talk about peer pressure making you drink. Well, most young people don't, and that's great. But the worrying thing is of those people who do is they're drinking something like twice as much as they did a few years ago. And that's really dangerous, and you can't just allow that to happen.
So where does that leave us? Teen binge drinking continues to be a problem despite the millions invested in it so far. This suggests the government hasn't found the right approach yet. Authorities targeting groups of young people to split them up could lead to abuse of power and a cat-and-mouse situation that gives young people a bad reputation. We think the money should be spent on more services and activities for young people to get involved with in a safe, drink-free environment.